Hello and welcome. My name is Father William Maestri, and this is Overfed and Undernourished. The topic, once again, is religious freedom. This is part 9 of our 10-part series, and we ask the question, can the person of faith participate in the public square? Can a person of faith participate in the civic life, in its totality, within public life today? The answer may seem obvious, yes, of course. However, there are a number of issues that make the answer a little more complex than a simple yes. First, raises the question of religious liberty itself within the Constitution. The Bill of Rights, as we have discussed in previous presentations, contains 2 clauses, the Non-Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. Traditionally, up until probably the middle of the 20th century, both of those clauses were understood in a compatible way. That is, the Non-Establishment Clause, that is, there was to be no officially sanctioned religion practiced and endorsed by the government to the exclusion of other religions, and the free exercise meant that there was going to be a pluralism of religion. The more religion, that was fine. They could all participate equally under the law in the public life of the society. But something happened. A new kind of jurisprudence developed in the middle of the 20th century and certainly has accelerated in our own day-to-day. And what I mean by that is this. Those 2 clauses, the non-establishment and the free exercise, have somehow come to mean that the first opposes the second and the second is at odds with the first. And I really don't think the founders ever envisioned it that way. That is, every time there is a public display of a religious figure, whether it's a cross, a menorah, a Star of David, what have you, take your pick, a crib at Christmas time, etc. This has been interpreted now as the establishment of religion. And this, I think, completely turns the first freedom or the first liberty on its head, so that any time one speaks publicly, especially within a governmental activity, a governmental property, or a governmental extension, such as in schools, or any kind of activity that can somehow be related to a government exercise, then the event must be free of any kind of religious display or any kind of talk about religion, which means then that any exercise of religion automatically bumps up against the establishment of religion. Now, many people have found this objectionable, and I think with good reason. The fact that a cross is there, or a menorah, or the Star of David, or again, a crib, take your pick, or children praying in school, that somehow this is the establishment of an official state religion. I don't think that a reasonable person could conclude that the mere expression of religious faith within a private or a public, governmental even, exercise or facility is the actual establishment to the exclusion of all other religions, to the exclusion of all others. In effect, if someone says, well, that offends me, that excludes me, then the entire display or expression of religion is declared unconstitutional. The founders worried about the tyranny of the majority. The fear today among many is a tyranny of the minority. As soon as one person or a kind of class action activity takes place, that negates the right of the majority to exercise their freedom of expression, even if there's a long historical pedigree. And so you see crosses removed, we see cribs taken down and no longer in display. We even play with the language. We can't, in some instances, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas becomes Happy Holidays, whatever that means. Well, it's so generic enough. I guess that's inclusive of everything under the sun. Well, but something distinctive is lost. And the mere fact that one expression is there does not mean that other expressions are demeaned or other expressions are of no value. It means that in this particular context, for this particular group and community, this is the predominant expression of either prayer, of a kind of religious celebration, and even if it does take place on a government property or a government exercise. After all, the citizens in the majority in that particular instance who are excluded do not cease being citizens having their right to express publicly and as a group in such a way that no way is the government, is the entire United States endorsing a religion as the official religion of the United States. That has never been our tradition, and it was one of the fears of the founders, and one of the things that they did not want because they rejected explicitly the European model of establishing a state religion. So, but that idea of putting the two clauses at odds with each other have really become more and more accelerated in our own particular time, especially in the 21st century. Secondly, is this notion of neutrality. This notion of neutrality, which I would like to debunk. The idea that you can participate in the public square activities as long as it's neutral. That is, it's free of any kind of values at all, especially religious values, Now, if we are serious for just a moment and reflect for just a moment, there is no such thing as a value-free activity. No such thing. Those who say, well, you have to be neutral. Well, let me break the news to you. Neutrality itself is a value. Value-free is a value. You are valuing the freedom of values. Now, I don't know how to square that circle, because the very idea of neutrality embraces a particular viewpoint and a particular cluster of values that associate with that value, the master value of neutrality. As soon as we make a decision, as soon as we invest ourselves or think about something, we are making value judgments. When you go to something as simple as go to the grocery store, and there's a number of breads that you could select. And so you choose brand A over brand B. For what reason? It might be habit. It might be quality. It might be price. It might be something that someone recommended to you. There's a whole host of reasons. But that choice is not value-free. Even something like picking a loaf of bread. We talk about value-free journalism. There's no such thing as that. What you put into a story, what you get rid of a story, what lays on the floor or what never sees the light of day in the newspaper, some editor, some human being made a value judgment. Recently, we've heard a great deal of talk about scientific models, whether it's storms and hurricanes or whether it's coronavirus, etc. You have these scientific models, which have proved, to be kind about it, less than accurate, even within a zone of probability of accuracy. Why? Because the models are only as good and accurate as the information that human beings put into them, the weight that they give to the factors. So this idea that somehow we must be value neutral, we cannot come to the public square, especially with our religious values, is to ask people of faith to divest themselves of their deepest held commitments, their deepest held convictions and beliefs in order to participate in the public square. It's impossible. As a human being, we are value creatures. We make decisions and judgments and choices on the basis of our values. And often our deepest values, our deepest commitments spring from our religious faith. But so if we ask people, yes, you can participate, but what you have to do is you have to come totally and completely neutral, a kind of tabula rasa, a clean slate, before you can enter into public life. This to me is unreasonable, and it's something that we ask of no other area of life, frankly. Even the scientists, as soon as they interject themselves into an experiment, it ceases to be totally and completely objective. They influence the outcome by the way in which the experiment is set up, the way in which the data is interpreted, what factors go into it. So this elusive goal of value neutrality is a standard that on its face is impossible to meet. And certainly it should not be, in my view, it should not be required of people who want to participate in the public square in terms of divesting themselves of their deepest beliefs. And the third problem is the problem of issues. The problem of issues. We talk today a great deal about hot-button cultural issues. We even talk about the culture wars. Well, beneath, and culture issues are very important because culture is one of the most powerful formation factors in values, in a national character and individual character, the kind of things we choose, the kind of things we avoid. So culture is very important. But beneath all of the cultural values are a great deal of moral and religious issues in play. And yet, we say today, yes, you can participate in the public debate on issues such as abortion, contraception, euthanasia, same-sex marriage. You can talk about issues having to do with the economy, war and peace, all of those kinds of issues. But you cannot come to the discussion if you bring your morals and your religious beliefs to them. They're not allowed. Now, granted, there's no law about it. There's something much more effective. It is kind of a cultural prohibition in which we all kind of side look at one another as soon as they bring religion into the mix. That's looked upon as suspicious, and people say, well, now don't bring religion in because the two things you shouldn't talk about are politics and religion. Well, frankly, often the only two interesting things to talk about is politics and religion. But we tell the person of religion, you can participate, but what you have to do is take those deepest wrappings of your religious values and your morals that are deeply held by you, firmly and sincerely held, and you must somehow manage to clean yourself of them and come and participate. Now, supposing we said the same thing, for example, for those who are concerned about gender equality. And we say you can participate in all of these issues, however, you cannot bring your convictions and values about gender equality into the discussion. On its face, we think that that would be absurd and unjust. Yet, when it comes to religion, we say religion is divisive, it's exclusive, it's discriminatory, it's all of those kinds of things. Well, once again, all of the great issues are always divisive. Take the issue of slavery. After all, we fought a civil war over it. That was pretty divisive. The issues of war and peace, the issues of the economy, all of these issues, the issues of citizenship, who qualifies as a citizen, who doesn't. Well, certainly the life issues and issues having to do with marriage and family life, the way in which we allocate resources, the high issues of justice and freedom and peace and all of those things, they are divisive by their very nature because people are going to disagree. So if an issue, for you to discuss it, can only take place if it's not divisive and it doesn't cause disagreements within the society, I'm not sure what would be discussed, especially today. When if one says, oh, well, today's Wednesday, you probably may have somebody who'll say yes, but on the international dateline, it's Thursday somewhere. And it's that kind of porcupine, Brillo pad approach to life today, which makes the building of a consensus so difficult. But it severely impacts the person of religious faith and deeply held moral convictions from participating. The strange conflict now between the first two clauses of the Bill of Rights, the non-establishment and the free exercise, this impossible standard of total neutrality, which is impossible for human beings to achieve, and on the leading issues of which people have deeply held convictions, and they spring from their morality. They're asked to leave that to the side if you want to fully participate in the society. And I think that people of religion, of religious faith, have felt themselves excluded, in some instances discriminated against, especially in this pluralistic society where the very nature of democracy is open and free debate, where people can come and express their deepest beliefs and values, sincerely held. Some we agree with, some we don't agree with. But to have what some have called the naked public square, that is, a public forum, national, state, local, where citizens can come to discuss the leading issues, to express themselves, whether in prayer, whether in the leading moral and cultural issues of the day, whether in various proposals on the state, national, and local level, to require of them this kind of antiseptic approach. It seems to many of us that this is an infringement and an exclusion and an unjust exclusion in participation of the people in the people's business. That is, the direction in which the society will go forth. And so I think that there needs to be some serious thinking among political, spiritual, and the body politic in general about these kinds of issues and concerns, because after all, democracy, and especially a republic democracy, requires not less talk but more talk. And the entrance of religious values and morality into the discussion does not hurt the body politics, but rather it enriches and enlivens, that is, the quality of discourse that takes place, which is essential to a democracy.